There comes a time in history when a nation must decide who it is and who it refuses to become. And today that nation is India. For decades, the dance between East and West was delicate, but now the music has stopped. India has ended its major trade ties with America, and the world is holding its breath. India's recent decision to significantly reduce or end major trade ties with the United States is far more than a matter of shifting markets or changing trade routes. On the surface, it may appear to be an economic realignment, a strategy to gain better deals or forge stronger relations with other global powers, but at its core, this is a bold assertion of national sovereignty. It is a declaration that India will no longer allow economic relationships to dictate its dignity, political stance, or strategic direction. It's about more than trade. It's about the soul of a nation that refuses to be molded by external expectations. For decades, India maintained a delicate balance. It engaged deeply with the West, especially with the U.S., in sectors like defense, technology, pharmaceuticals, and agriculture. American markets opened to Indian goods and services, and in return, Indian policy often showed a degree of flexibility toward U.S. strategic interests. But beneath the smiles and summit handshakes, there was always an undercurrent of tension, an awareness that true partnership requires mutual respect, and that India was not always treated as an equal player at the table. Policies often came with strings. Collaboration often carried conditions. And slowly but surely, India began to realize that economic gain should not come at the cost of political autonomy. The modern Indian identity is built on resilience. It's a nation that endured colonization, fought for independence, and carved out its own democratic destiny in a turbulent world. That journey instilled in its people and its leaders a fierce sense of self-determination. When trade deals begin to resemble chains, and when economic alliances start looking like influence traps, India remembers its past. And that past demands that it must never again be put in a position where it is expected to bend to survive. The move away from America, then, is not a rejection of globalization, it is a rejection of dependency. The difference may appear subtle, but it is vast in significance. Dependency is what happens when one nation can threaten another with sanctions or trade restrictions and expect immediate compliance. It's when aid is offered with policy conditions, or when military cooperation demands ideological alignment. India has watched these patterns, not just in its own experience, but around the world. It has seen how economic partnerships have been used as leverage to extract concessions, and it has seen the costs of remaining quiet in the face of such manipulation. In stepping away from such an arrangement with the U.S., India is signaling to the world that it will no longer be a pawn in someone else's grand strategy. This decision also reflects a broader transformation in India's self-image. It no longer sees itself as an emerging nation that must rely on the goodwill of more established powers to thrive. Instead, it sees itself as a future superpower, fully capable of setting its own course. And to do that, it must be free, economically, politically, and strategically. True freedom means being able to say no. It means being able to walk away from the negotiating table even when the other side holds the purse strings. India is exercising that freedom now, not because it seeks isolation, but because it values dignity more than dependency. This doesn't mean India is closing its doors to the world. Far from it. What it does mean is that India will now choose its partners more carefully. It will engage with countries that offer mutual respect, not manipulation. It will trade with nations that recognize its strength, not ones that try to exploit its vulnerabilities. India's decision to end or scale back its trade relationship with the U.S. is part of a larger strategy to rebuild its global ties on a foundation of equality. It is reaching out to Russia, to China, to others in Asia and beyond, not to submit to them, but to rebalance the world around it. In the end, this isn't a story of anger or revenge. It's not about who betrayed whom, or who benefits more. It's a story of awakening. India is awakening to its own power, its own place in the global order. It's realizing that it doesn't need to follow anyone else's lead. It can lead itself, and that realization, more than any trade agreement, is what defines this historic pivot. Sovereignty is not something to be negotiated. It is something to be protected at all costs. And in walking away from an unequal trade partnership, India is doing just that, protecting the very essence of what makes it a nation worth respecting. India's decision to pivot toward Russia and China is not a sign of desperation or political confusion. It's a strategic recalibration rooted in long-term thinking. While the West may view these relationships through the lens of past rivalries or ideological opposition, India views them through the lens of opportunity and sovereignty. Russia has been a trusted partner for decades, offering consistent support in defense, energy, and diplomacy without attaching political strings. No moments when the West turned cold or conditional. Russia remained dependable. Their partnership is built on historical respect and shared interests, not lectures and limitations. Turning toward China is far more complex. There are real tensions, territorial disputes, and mutual suspicion. But international relations are rarely about friendship. They are about leverage. India recognizes that economic growth in the coming decades will be driven by regional integration, supply chain strength, and digital infrastructure. China, despite being a competitor, offers a gateway into advanced manufacturing, AI collaboration, and trade routes that the West cannot match without delay or politics. By engaging with China strategically, rather than emotionally, India is choosing progress over provocation. This shift also represents India's deeper understanding of the changing world order. The American-led unipolar world is weakening. In its place, a multipolar system is rising, with power centers in Moscow, Beijing, New Delhi, and beyond. By aligning with Russia and tactically engaging with China, India is positioning itself within this new order, not as a spectator, but as a central player. This doesn't mean blind trust or surrender of values. It means India is learning to balance power, build resilience, and form relationships that respect its autonomy. The West may struggle to interpret this as anything other than betrayal. But for India, it's simply business made sovereign. The future lies in collaboration without coercion, in trade without subjugation. India is making it clear that it will no longer choose sides in someone else's conflict. It will choose what serves its people, its future, and its destiny. In the global game of alliances, India is playing the long game, calculated, precise, and driven, not by emotion, but by an unwavering focus on securing its rightful place on the world stage. America's mistake was believing that India would always play by its rules. For years, U.S. policymakers operated under the assumption that economic incentives, defense deals, and global recognition would be enough to secure India's loyalty. But they failed to understand the depth of India's desire for independence, not just politically, but economically and strategically. Every time the U.S. tried to pressure India into taking sides, impose sanctions-related consequences, or demand alignment on foreign conflicts, it underestimated the Indian mindset. A nation built through colonial resistance does not take kindly to being cornered, even subtly. This miscalculation wasn't sudden. It was built over years of expecting India to compromise its national interest for the sake of partnerships that seemed increasingly one-sided. Whether it was pressuring India to limit energy trade with Russia, comply with Western climate agendas that hurt its industrial growth, or restricting technology transfers unless India bowed to certain diplomatic expectations, each move added to a growing realization in New Delhi the relationship was conditional. And conditional loyalty is not true partnership. By ending trade ties with the U.S., India has rejected this entire model of transactional diplomacy. It has signaled that no matter how powerful the other party may be, India will not trade its autonomy for convenience. America may have offered wealth and technology, but it often demanded alignment at the cost of self-interest. In breaking away, India is telling the world that it values sovereignty more than favors, and long-term self-respect over short-term advantages. The U.S. misread India's strength as dependence. Now India is showing that true strength lies in walking away when the cost of staying becomes dignity itself. Ask ChatGPT. India's recent shift is rooted in a broader vision, one where the world is no longer dominated by a single superpower but shaped by multiple centers of influence. This move is not just about trade or alliances, it's about redefining how global power works. India understands that the era of a unipolar world led by the United States is fading. Economic power is dispersing, political influence is becoming regional, and strategic interests are no longer dictated by just Washington or Brussels. In this evolving landscape, India sees an opportunity not just to participate, but to lead. By stepping away from Western-dominated institutions and deals, India is making space for new forms of engagement, especially through platforms like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. These alliances offer India a voice that isn't overshadowed by historical hierarchies or colonial legacies. These alliances offer India a voice that isn't overshadowed by historical hierarchies or colonial legacies. They provide a platform for negotiation based on equality, not dependency. For India, a multipolar world isn't just theory. It's a practical pathway toward balance, fairness, and mutual respect. In this new vision, India doesn't seek dominance. It seeks relevance. It seeks a place where its decisions matter, where its markets and innovations carry weight, and where its diplomacy isn't filtered through another country's interests. This vision pushes India to forge ties that respect its independence, promote shared growth, and reduce vulnerability to external pressure. It's a bold rejection of outdated power structures and a clear step toward a world where influence is earned through contribution, not control. India's pursuit of a multipolar world is not a reaction to any one country. It's the result of decades of reflection, planning, and the rising confidence of a nation that knows its time has come. Ask ChatGPT. This vision pushes India to forge ties that respect its independence, promote shared growth, and reduce vulnerability to external pressure. It's a bold rejection of outdated power structures and a clear step toward a world where influence is earned through contribution, not control. India's pursuit of a multipolar world is not a reaction to any one country. It's the result of decades of reflection, planning, and the rising confidence of a nation that knows its time has come. India's decision to break from traditional alliances marks its transformation from a reactive player to a proactive force in global affairs. No longer content with being viewed as a supporting actor in international diplomacy, India is now asserting itself as a central figure, a nation capable of shaping outcomes rather than merely adapting to them. For decades, it played a cautious game, balancing between superpowers, avoiding entanglements, and gradually building its economic and strategic capacity. But now, that quiet buildup is turning into visible strength. This new India is unapologetic. It's investing in its defense industry, becoming a global technology hub, expanding its influence in the global south, and speaking with clarity on international platforms. Whether it's climate negotiations, trade pacts, or regional security, India is stepping up not to follow the agenda, but to set one. The shift away from the United States isn't just a rejection, it's a redefinition of India's place in the world. What makes this transformation powerful is that it's deliberate. India is not rushing into alliances for validation. It's choosing partnerships based on mutual respect and shared benefit. By aligning more with nations like Russia and engaging strategically with China, India is signaling that it will form relationships on its own terms, not through pressure or coercion. In doing so, India is rewriting the rules of engagement. It is no longer seeking to be accepted into elite circles formed by the West. It is building its own table, inviting those who respect its independence, and positioning itself as a power that others must negotiate with, not around. This evolution is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and unmistakably confident. India is no longer just rising. It is arriving with purpose, strength. India's choice to end trade ties with the United States is ultimately a decision rooted in dignity. It's not a reaction born from anger or rivalry. It's a declaration of self-worth. For far too long, economic relationships came with invisible strings. The expectation was that access to markets or defense cooperation would come at the cost of silence, submission, or compromise. But India is no longer willing to operate under such conditions. It refuses to be seen as a junior partner, or a nation that needs permission to shape its own destiny. This step is not about isolation. It's about elevation. India is choosing to walk away from deals that undermine its autonomy and toward a future where it controls its own direction. It understands that real power doesn't come from how many friends a country has. It comes from how clearly it defines its values, how consistently it defends its interests, and how confidently it acts when those values are tested. By prioritizing dignity over dependency, India is sending a message to the world. It will no longer tolerate partnerships that require the sacrifice of national pride. It is not looking for approval from the West, nor is it chasing validation through alliances. Instead, it is crafting relationships based on equality and shared purpose. That shift, though silent, is profound. This move sets a new precedent for how developing powers can operate on the global stage. It proves that economic strength means little without the courage to defend political independence. India is proving that dignity is not a luxury, it's a non-negotiable. In choosing dignity, India is not turning away from the world. It's simply stepping into it, standing taller, speaking louder, and making clear that its future will be shaped on its own terms.